It's a new recording starting sound.
Yeah, that's how you know it's starting. Hello, folks. I'm here with Sophie and Alon from Product Board. Sophie's a senior PM, I think, and Alon is the senior director of PM. But I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about Product Board. Fire away. Sophie.
Yes.
Sure, I'll introduce myself really quick. Sophie, I come into product management through many years of strategy consulting and venture capitalist, realized I wanted to be an operator, and found my way into product through Box. Yeah. So I've been here for almost a year, and I'll pass it on to Alon.
Hi, yeah, so I'm relatively a newer joiner to Product Board. This is month 3 for me. But I've been in various product roles throughout my career, mostly in the data space, but my last job before Product Board was at Amplitude. So I was starting to kind of put one foot in the product for PMs and one foot in the data space, and really liked building products for myself. So that brought me to Product Board and worked closely with Sophie and our US product management team here.
Cool. Actually, so let me just ask you both. So Sophie, how many product people did you have at Box?
I think about 40.
40? And what, were you in a particular group at Box?
Sure, I led the growth team over at Box. So worked quite a bit with, we're a combination of kind of a GM, so self-serve numbers, so churn and ARR, and then also on our growth side as well.
Right, okay. And how many PMs just in that growth group?
Relatively small. So there's just 3 of us, which is interesting because Dropbox, which is much more SMB, there's about 40 growth PMs. So we tend to be more of an enterprise focus. So our growth team was smaller.
Okay, cool. And did you arrange? I mean, the common theme that I get through all the talks is that basically teams arrange themselves in triads of a PM, a lead dev, and then a designer. Were you kind of doing that in the growth team? What did that look like in your small group?
A bit, yeah. So one thing that I find really interesting about growth PM is it's so different and still a role that's really trying to be understood than a core PM. And so in many ways, your metrics are, or how you think of success isn't necessarily are you meeting customer problem, but actually are you driving business metrics? And so you have a little bit less of what I call, you still have your triad with your design and PM and engineering, but that is actually equally as important as what I call just your cross-functional support across CS, marketing, and sales. So you kind of end up being the glue between a lot of different departments.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's glue and it's also a bit of a push and pull because you want to run some projects that are actually perhaps at a different cadence to what the other teams are working at. So you get a little bit of tension there.
Yeah, that happens quite a
bit. For sure. Okay, very cool. And Alon, so basically you were group PM at Amplitude, and again, that's the sort of thing. There must have been a bunch of different initiatives to do. Oh, Google's talking to me. So along with the Amplitude team, were you basically focusing on one particular area? It said you were group PM, but
yeah, there were 2. So the team is organized into what we called pillars, but cross-functional groups across PM design and engineering. And I led 2 of them. One was focused on we call it data management, but all of the work that it takes to get Amplitude up and running and instrumented and getting data captured and getting to the point where you can actually start asking questions of it. As you can imagine, it's there's a lot that goes into that. And then a newer product initiative, actually kind of very related to some of the work that you do on behavioral targeting. So working with a lot of partners and allowing people to leverage cohorts or groups of users that they've identified in Amplitude through the course of analysis and leveraging them elsewhere. So email marketing, mobile push, those types of things, advertising.
Yeah, I would have thought integrations would have been a fairly standalone sort of unit in itself. Yeah. All right, so let's talk Product Board. So it's a really interesting space in terms of basically the old story to do with you can't get product market fit unless you've actually talked to some customers and gathered feedback and so on. So you guys say you're customer-driven product management. Tell us a little bit about how that kind of like manifests in terms of the product.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it, and Sophie, please jump in if I miss anything. So I think I'm a relatively new joiner to Product Board, but I'm a two-time user and buyer. So we use Product Board actually at Amplitude, and then at my previous startup as well. And the thing that really jumped out, and I think one of the biggest differentiators for us, was how central users and feedback and that part of the product really was, not just in a means of collecting feedback from different places, but how that manifests across the rest of the product. So across how we support making decisions about priority, about how we kind of communicate the plans that the team has in terms of roadmap, what's on it, who's asked for stuff. And I think it helps lead to not only better decisions, but a lot more transparency into the end-to-end process. So helping people in the organization or people external to the organization understand who something benefits and how they fed into the process, and how the team is kind of focused on improving lives for specific users.
So does that, yeah, go Sophie.
Sure, I would just echo that it's really a home for product managers, right? Like sales has always had their home, Salesforce, not always, but for quite a long time now. So does CS, and it's now this place where not only can you get all of the feedback that you need from your customers in order to drive prioritization, but it's a place for you and your team to keep track of what you're working on, to make sure that the plans are going accordingly, and that ultimately you can actually share that cross-functionally. So as I was talking about growth, it makes it a lot easier for me to show sales and show CS what I'm working on, how I've prioritized their requests, and specifically what we're working on next. So I think we're really proud of defining this new category of product management tools.
Are you actually finding that basically your PMs come in and start the day with that tab open and it stays open all day?
Yeah, do you want me to share my screen? It's for sure open.
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, I could share mine because I went through sort of like the initial stage, but you can share yours if you like.
Let me see if there's anything that's
private. I can do a bland one if you like. You want to do an empty one?
Yeah. I'll let Alon talk, and then at some point I'll flash my screen and show you guys. But yeah, I live in it, right? Like every single thing that I do in product is captured in there. And so if at any point Alon wanted to see what I was working on, oh, perfect, there you go. If at any point, Alon wanted to see what I was working on, he would actually be able to look into every single feature that our group is working towards.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to just echo that. I spend, and I have spent, not just at Product Board, obviously, but in previous roles, a lot of time in the tool, because it is acts as that glue between all the different places that product managers need to kind of be asserting themselves in the organization, all the other tools that exist. And I think that the PMs that I've worked with, at least in my career, have been extremely high ownership individuals and are willing to kind of like grit their teeth and deal with a lot. And so I think that kind of existence across Jira and spreadsheets and other systems and Salesforce, and being that glue that holds it all together is possible. But it was a sense of relief, I think, when I first signed up for Product Board years ago now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's drill in on that. So if we're, which we are, so we're a Jira organization ourselves, and we use Trello as the pre-triaging aspect of that, and customer information capture is incredibly ad hoc. Sometimes it's interview based, and obviously it's customer support based and things like that. So I was looking at some of the stats. I don't know whether I've got it here now. Oh yeah, so 52% of teams think they're customer driven, but in reality, one in 10 actually successfully capture feedback, and 1 in 3 teams have no process whatsoever. So I'd say that we're kind of processless in terms of capturing customer feedback, but we try and sort of catch whatever ball is falling at any particular stage. So I'm quoting those things from a study that you did with Product Collective. So folks, if you go to the Product Board website, you can download that study, and there's quite a lot of stats in there. That was 700, was it something like 700 PMs I think contributed to that, so that's a great study. Good. Yeah, so tell us about this kind of trail. You must have a lot of customers who want to who want to come across from, say, a Trello thing, and how does Product Board actually work if you're kind of going to stay inside Jira for your development team?
Sure. So, Alon, I'm happy to take on the Jira question. I have worked a little bit less with Trello, but I would assume that it's similar. So, what's really nice is that, kind of back to the home that I was talking about, Product Board allows you to have your product management home and still have your engineering home and be able to integrate back and forth. So what I do, at least with my engineering team, is once we've prioritized something, I very easily just push it, and we push it to Jira. And then there's like a two-way sync, right? And I know when somebody is working on it, when it's completed, and then it kind of comes back to my status, and I can mark it as complete. So I have visibility into the engineer's home without actually having to go into Jira to check on all of the different features.
Got it. Great. Okay, cool. And does that work? Do you want a one-to-one mapping, or does it kind of work better at an epic level, or what's the right granularity?
Oh, sorry. There's some flexibility, so different teams will organize differently. The primary kind of means that we see people integrating the two are we have a hierarchy, so we can get into kind of details about how we organize and structure initiatives and kind of needs and features in Product Board. But that lowest level tends to be mapped with an epic. So it's kind of the explainable, understandable minimum piece of functionality that's going to be released to users, and that can have sub features that align with stories. There could be more details about specifically what's getting built and what's getting done, but with an eye towards the roadmaps and other communication methods within the product really being at a level that's consumable by people that aren't necessarily on the product team. So, go-to-market functions, customers, people who are trying to kind of understand what the team is working on.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's good. So in terms of before that, you've got information capture as well too. Is there a way I can sort of like bring this stuff up on the screen? So if I just take me out, and is there?
Sophie, do you want to walk through the pro upgrade trial so we can talk about insights?
I can. So if you go to the very bottom, you can see that you're actually on our first plan, which is just roadmaps. So we have ability to, if you know what you're trying to build, you can still just use Product Board for roadmaps and then also planning purposes. But the use case that you're talking about is in Pro. So if you hover over to, in our trial experience, it'll actually let you explore. So if you click Let's Explore, you should expand, and your functionality will be, and I think you need to click, if you click on number 2, yeah, and then click Let's Explore, the blue button.
Yep.
I will share my screen and we will get that fixed ASAP.
While Sophie's pulling that up, I can kind of speak to what we're about to see with insights in the feedback gathering process. And it sounds like your current organization, David, a lot of the companies I've worked with in my career have more informal processes and structure when you're at the size where you can really keep everyone really plugged into what customers and users are asking for, and the number of teams executing in parallel is lower. But as sales functions, go-to-market functions, the product development organization grows, it can be really hard to avoid recency bias. It's like, which customer has complained about something on the last call and kind of fixating too much on that. So what we really try to do with insights and Product Board is, one, just put it into a single place, even just collecting it across what support tickets are we getting? What have salespeople heard about? What notes have I taken on user research, so that there's a unified view. But then capturing that as more structured data and information that you can actually use in the course of prioritization. So being able to look at not only what is the most asked about feature, what are the most commonly articulated needs, but even how those break up across customer size and segments and other things. So you can really kind of look at it in a bit more rigorous fashion.
Okay, cool. All right, Sophie, I've enabled. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So I'll walk you through a really quick overview, and then I'm happy to go in any direction that you would like. But overall, we have the kind of centralized source where you can bring all feedback. So as you can see, you can bring everything from Slack, Intercom, and Zapier, everything from here. We have Zendesk, we have email integrations, and all of a sudden, all of your feedback comes into one place. But I think where the magic really happens is the ability to link insights to feature ideas that you might want to work on. So for example, you can come in here and you can actually link specific notes to different features that you're working on, right? So you can link it to here. You can kind of put the importance, and you know that that is linked, and you'll always have that. What that means in terms of when you get to prioritization is you can come in here, put your backlog together, and you start to see that our customer feedback is helping dictate what I call a user impact score. So all of a sudden what we're doing is we're quantifying, in a way, the customer feedback that's coming in to see what really is bubbling at the top. So we can have the voice of customer incorporated in what I call our prioritization process. So that's why in this particular instance, rich text formatting comes to the top, in that we have actually prioritized that to the release. So we use this very religiously at Product Board. We always want to make sure that what we're doing is something that makes a lot of sense for our users. And I think Alon can even talk to, we go a step further, which is, can we segment too? So what are the segments we care most about, and how can we make sure that that voice of the customer is even more weighted, or even more brought to attention of the product team as they're prioritizing.
And does this, I was just going to say, does the scoring ultimately sort of fold or follow like a RICE type scoring method, or is that free to you to do, or do you kind of like a sort of help in it, or do you enable that scoring?
Yeah, so we have kind of a separate concept of a prioritization score where you can assign drivers and weights and divide by effort and kind of come up with a flexible means of prioritization. This is a really helpful input to that process to help teams understand where where the biggest unmet needs are, what new opportunities exist. So if you don't mind switching to the hierarchy view, I think one of the kind of other really interesting ways we're set up is the features, the kind of feature epic level items or objects in the system aren't the only thing. They're organized into a relatively flexible hierarchy. Many teams will organize them by jobs to be done or needs. And the user impact score and that kind of summation of feedback that you've gotten aggregates up that entire hierarchy. So you can really quickly at a glance understand, for a given segment, are people sharing more feedback about communicating with teammates or administering their team, or teams will obviously have much richer hierarchies than this example. So what it can do is help the team turn their attention to, say, areas where they might want to do additional research to better understand a problem domain going into a planning cycle. At Amplitude, I'm newer at Product Board, but at Amplitude, and I suspect at Product Board as well, once I'm fully up and running, one of the biggest use cases for honestly both Amplitude and Product Board was to help us understand who to go talk to. So like who's shared feedback about a specific part of the product, who shared a problem before, who's used a part of the product, bringing kind of the product analytics angle into it. And the combination of those two things was a really incredible way of being targeted about where we spend our time talking to users and customers.
Okay. So just kind of out of interest of that, is there a particular way you would handle, say, abandoning trialers or churning customers in terms of getting feedback from them? Because obviously it's notoriously difficult to get that sort of information once they've, all your indicators are kind of trailing indicators. Have you got any sort of approach to that?
Yeah, I can talk through. Sure.
Please go ahead, Sophie.
Yeah, yes. Very much growth realm, right? So what I can talk through a bit of what I've done at Box in the past, but for Product Board, like we sent out a survey and tried to get some information out. We ended up bringing any responses into Product Board and then actually assigning them to different parts of our hierarchy that we thought were important for us to change in order to either bring people back or to make sure that we weren't seeing the same amount of churn. So we certainly use all of that feedback and try and make changes. And then actually, one of our very recent changes was because of some of the abandoner information that we received, where they were hoping for a somewhat simpler plan. So we actually implemented a roadmap plan called Essentials for those folks.
Right. Yes. we'll come back to the plans in a little while. But yeah, Alon, did you want to add to that at all? Or?
Yeah, I think Sophie covered it well. I was mostly going to add from a tactics perspective how to get this information in. Again, the insights inbox is pretty flexible. So we use Typeform internally to collect churn reasons and to survey customers. I think for a kind of retrospective of what problems that people had that led them to churn in the past, I've married kind of the analytics side. So who's done what in the product, who's ultimately churned with, what feedback had they shared with the product, in their first 15, 30 days as they were ramping up. That might be indicative of, a bigger problem that needs to get paid attention to. I think it can help contextualize data, which sometimes on its own is quite hard to really fully understand.
Got it. And getting information in from say Typeform, for example, does that come in through the Zapier connection, or this more option that you've got there is like, just, I can see how like Zendesk and Intercom connect in. That's logical. What about this sort of ad hoc feedback type thing? So.
Yeah, Zapier, we also have an API. So a lot of customers will write their integrations against the API, or even have in-app feedback components that they've built within their products that they can feed information to as well.
And there's, one of the great traditions is obviously speaking to people as opposed to just getting it through tickets and things like that. Yeah. So there's tools popped up. I don't know whether you're familiar with Dovetail, for example. A bunch of Atlassian folks doing validation via video and things like that. How would you kind of bring in feedback from a tool like that into this so there's no disconnect?
Yeah. So I think for us, basically, as long as content can get captured, information can get provided. Obviously, the textual associations that the kind of snippet that Sophie went through leading into the score surfaces and other views to give you, snippets of text and context. But it can be links to user research sessions. It can be transcripts from videos. It can be oftentimes both at Product Board and in past roles. We'll just take any user research notes directly in Product Board as a note and kind of gets captured. And the nice part about the snippets and the highlighting is you can assign a specific part of a transcript or a specific part of notes to different parts of that hierarchy we showed before. So it could relate to more than one problem. You might have more than one piece of feedback captured in one of those inputs. So it's been, I'd say, historically more oriented around written feedback, but there are, I think, a lot of exciting opportunities for us as we think about broadening this as to how to kind of more richly integrate videos and other context structured quantitative information. There's a whole kind of exciting roadmap ahead of us around how we want to make this really that central repository that pulls together any inputs at all, not just feedback from customers that are relevant for product teams' decision making.
Yeah, certainly the last 6 to 8 months has normalized video collection of feedback.
Yes.
Sure. For sure.
Yeah,
okay.
We even take some of our audio, we take audio transcriptions from Chorus or Zoom or Gong or whatever you're using. And a lot of times what my team does is we actually just add a note, we copy and paste it, and then we bring, the 3 top things and we link those to actual features. And what's nice is if I'm ever on one of these features and I'm actually, let's say I'm working on it, right? So let me find one that has an insight, because we have very limited for our data set, but I can actually go to this specific ticket and remember what it was. So I can always go back to the entire context
source. Yeah.
In 6 months. Yeah, so that's what's really nice. I love it because 6 months later, I'm working on it. I forgot what I tagged, and I can go back to that user interview if it's actually important.
Yeah, I think to one of your earlier questions, David, about differentiation between Trello, Jira, other systems, that decoupling, while it can seem somewhat minor, is, I'd say, a really big difference in the systems and kind of the mental models that they promote for usage. I've worked in companies that have used Jira as a repository of customer feedback, and the framing of having a story come in, or even if it's a different issue type, as here's a piece of feedback. I think promotes we need to kind of already be in solution mode and thinking about how we actually build this. And a little bit of separation goes a long way to helping teams identify, like, hey, we're getting asked for a lot of specific things, but that might point to a larger problem, and give a little bit more space to kind of reorient around how to actually tackle trying to solve it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just as a side question, so what's happened with the companies like Uservoice and so on? Like, were they just kind of like the first wave, and now this kind of like basically multi-channel collection and aggregation is closer to the way things work now, or is Uservoice just do they become another sort of data point to come in, or are they a competitor, or what's happening there?
Yeah, I think it's where we've drawn the boundary on our product in terms of the kind of jobs to be done that we're focused on. It tries to be realistic about the number of places that teams get feedback from. I think it's hard to kind of force all people in an organization or customers to channel and share feedback through a single place. If you do have one that kind of primarily exists, we can tap into it. And so that would be kind of another source for us. But we try to make sure that we kind of are that central place that can connect to anywhere that you might get feedback. We have a Slack integration, so we have a user community with all of our customers in it. We also have our internal Slack instance for sales, and people will share information. And being able to kind of select a message and push information in, and not forget something that is almost said to you in passing can be extremely valuable, because you can kind of feel more confident that you're not missing something, you're not forgetting something. It's not onerous to kind of go in and create a formal ticket to capture things. We're trying to kind of reduce the friction around that.
Yeah, great. Okay. All right. So let's switch gears. You mentioned the magic word, jobs to be done. So if you say, well, the way we kind of broadly think about things is OKRs, company level OKRs, group OKRs, and then that trickles down into jobs to be done or things like that, and then sprints and tickets come out of that particular thing. Is there any way the tool ultimately sort of helps drive disciplines around OKRs or JWD?
Um,
I'll let Sophie take this one.
No, certainly. So, I'm trying to bring back up our screen, but I can talk it at a high level first. We were definitely founded on this concept of jobs to be done, in that we need to make sure that the high level gets down to those details. And so I think the best way to do that is through what I'd call objectives. And we believe quite a bit in these objectives and trying to understand, hey, what are the things that we want to prioritize as a company? And then try to figure out from there, once we have those objectives, how we would assign features to those objectives. So once we have all aligned with, a specific objective on a growth team, then that helps us actually prioritize against our objectives, so that we're all making sure we're moving in the right direction and playing the part within the company. It's all an orchestra, so we're playing the right part in order to have the company progress. And so we offer that in Product Board. I don't know, Alon, if you want to add anything about objectives as I pull this up.
Yeah. So I think Sophie answered the question. We have this objective concept and object in the system. And what that allows us to do is really map business outcomes, product team outcomes to the work that's being done. The hierarchy that we showed before is really how we organize varying levels of jobs or needs from kind of the highest level to the most granular. And then features act as kind of the leaves under that, and the solutions that you might be trying out to help kind of solve or accomplish those particular jobs. And I think that marrying of levels of abstraction across kind of the highest level and lowest level is really where I see the core value proposition for a tool like Product Board. Hubert, our CEO, at our board meeting a couple of weeks ago, presented the company product-wide roadmap in Product Board to the board, who are coming in and not thinking about the minutia of the product, and then the product managers on the team are kind of using it in their day-to-day course of work with their engineering and design counterparts to kind of talk about specific things that are being shipped. And it's all connected. So you don't end up in the situation where you're creating a slide for that customer conversation you're about to have, or that board meeting that immediately becomes decoupled from the truth, and have kind of managing all those different versions of truth that people might be able to see.
That sounds way powerful in comparison to kind of like one of the current fashionable things to do is do a lot of stuff in Notion. But, Notion's, great as a repository, but it wouldn't give you that kind of hierarchical view where, basically you can dip in at different levels by the sounds of it.
We are avid Notion users ourselves for documentation, but not for kind of product process.
Mm-hmm. Is the vision then, is there a kind of like a flywheel vision then to try and actually get this used all up and down the organization, so it actually spreads way beyond product, so it actually... Yes,
absolutely. I mean, both from a vertical levels, larger, we have many customers who have grown with us, or larger customers who, especially this year, have been thrown into we need a digital product strategy and trying to build kind of disciplines around product management that are coming to us looking for higher level views, but other functions as well. So, people that depend on product sales, customer success, support, not only from a consumption of information, like I want to see what the product team is doing, but really a participation in the process, being able to share feedback along the way, being able to do things like share a perspective. Our customer success team shared a prioritized list of features based on their interactions with customers as an input to our Q4 planning process. So they were able to kind of go look at the real artifacts, the real work that was being done, what other kind of metadata information was captured on that, and provide an input to us. And that's something that we definitely are starting to see very commonly and want to do a better job actually productizing and supporting more kind of natively in the product.
Okay, cool. Well, let Sophie speak to what we've been talking about.
Sure. So I'll try to show some of what we have productized. But you do have the ability within Product Board to create your own objectives. We always advise that an objective is something that is on a time frame and that has key results associated with it. So if you go to
90 days or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So like it wouldn't be drive ongoing user engagement and say drive ongoing user engagement, and the KR could be, we want to increase engagement metric 5% amongst this persona. And you have all of this room to kind of describe a little bit more of what your objective is. And then you have the ability to kind of go through your backlog and say what makes sense with which objectives, and so you can kind of see you have the ability here to do quite a bit of metadata against the objective, or assign quite a bit of metadata. You can think about the value that the feature brings for the objective out of a score of 5, the effort required, which we usually pertains to effort, engineering estimates, and then also the priority. Some things are just must-haves, even though they might not be the highest value. You might have to do them because of a compliance test, for example. And then once you do that and you spend some of that time assigning the data, you get to this world where you can also even have roadmaps around it. So you can see this is actually our objective that we described as increased new user adoption and engagement. And you start having features underneath these and the timeframes. And so we find that actually what we do a lot with our sales and CS team is show the high level roadmap. So we show the objectives that we're trying to work on, and we describe why. We might go into detail as to, the KRs of this specific objective and why we picked it as a company. And then that's when you can then narrow into, and so these are the features that are going to help drive that, right? And these are the teams. You can even get to a point, there's so much flexibility in this tool, it's crazy. But there's, you can add the effort, or you can add the owners, you can add the effort priority. So it starts getting you from this high level conversation to, oh, you're interested in one place. Let's kind of dig in a little bit more here.
Okay, that's very good. All right. I'm just conscious of time, so I should probably ask the question that I should have asked right at the front. Who is the key kind of persona for customer? Okay, we've touched on some things such as the grander plans as to the organization where you guys want to go, but in terms of where you are today and who's the key foot in the door, who's the key customer you want to use, this will sort of tie in a little bit with the plans that you've got there in that trial thing. Can you describe who that key persona is that is your ideal customer to get started?
Yeah, so definitely make sure I'm not muted. I'm not muted, great. So product managers are obviously a key persona for us, but if you look at the numbers, actually surprisingly, we have a lot of engagement with the rest of the triad as well. So we have a concept of a maker, which is kind of an account with full edit access in the product. And it's about half to 2/3 product managers, but remainder engineers, designers, other people in the organization that are engaging in the product development process, and also benefit from having higher level views of the work that they're doing. Obviously, what we had discussed before about other personas in the organization, we have a contributor kind of user role that exists in the product that allows other people to come in, view things, leave comments, add notes directly. And so we see a lot of engagement across customer success and sales and support and other functions with that type of role. And then viewers as well. So most of our customers will kind of provide internal access to the entire organization, or partners or other people that want to see visibility into specific views in ProductBoard without having the ability to go in and add comments or make edits. We see customers of all sizes. Our business is a very healthy mix of very, very small, two-person startups that are trying to kind of find product market fit, all the way to some of the largest enterprises in the world that are trying to execute across portfolios of products and many product teams. So I wouldn't say there's a specific company size or phase of product that we find ourselves gravitating more or less towards. I think the user centricity aspect of it is important, both when you're trying to discover what are the problems that are most important to solve. If I'm trying to build a brand new product to solve someone's need, or I'm trying to refine a very mature product that's been around for a while and trying to kind of get the right inputs into doing that.
What I've just taken a screenshot of a couple of the first experiences had, but this was really cool. Unfortunately, I can't do the drop downs because it's just a screenshot, but it speaks a little bit to this kind of persona. So you've mentioned a little bit about the people. So the 50 to half to 2/3 of product managers. You've talked a little bit about the companies, from small ones, but who's really ideal here? So these little drop downs says I am product, there's I am product management, what the number of product managers, and so that was a really nice way that presumably in your onboarding, and I should say this is in the onboarding phase that I came across this, in your onboarding, this presumably leads into how you set up the first screens I see, or how you bias the templates to me and stuff like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I can answer that as your fellow growth friend, but I think not only does this help us figure out what we want to do in app, but also what we want to do with our people touch. When what I mean by that is, if we have this information, when CS and sales,
yep,
you get to talk to them, they actually have a good idea of what they should start with.
Yes.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention is, you actually hit the nail on the head completely with the different use cases. So you came in and you talked about the insights and the feedback. That's actually our first plan jump, where you get to all of a sudden incorporate all of your feedback into your backlog and then basically make customer-driven roadmaps. And then the next jump up is actually objectives, right? It's about how can I work across my teams and be more strategic and make it make sense across all these teams in a way that we're really moving the needle forward, and we can work cross-functionally and others can see what we're working on. So it's kind of funny that you found the exact use cases that we broke our.
So it started, so it sort of starts with your imperative needs. How do I actually do something that I'm empowered to do today? And then as it flywheels, we can actually use it for the much more strategic type views and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. All right, so just back to the persona companies then. So you say small teams, but I mean, where does this really work best? Does it really work with a company that's got product market fit, so they're post product market fit, and the engine room's kind of running now, and we're moving into sort of small experiments rather than really big cavorting around, just trying to try really big experiments to just see if anything lands. What's your kind of thoughts on that?
I can share my personal experience, which can speak to some of that. So the first company that I worked at when I initially started using ProductBoard was the 19-person startup at the time. So
is that Trifecta?
Yeah, Trifecta. So that was, right when we launched the first product. In the early days, we definitely did not have product market fit, and it was a lot of qualitative feedback and using Product Board to centralize a lot of the process and make sure that we were targeting our research efforts. We were kind of understanding the needs of the customers we were engaging with really early on. At Amplitude, we very much did have product market fit, and it was a much faster paced scaling organization that was, growing headcount, growing revenue, growing the size of the product team. And there it was very helpful in really coalescing a lot of informal processes and trying to kind of centralize things that had been hallway conversations and ad hoc meetings. And I was at Amplitude when everyone transitioned very abruptly to working from home and starting to need to collaborate a little bit more digitally than I think we had been used to in the past. And so it also helped kind of play a role there. Some of our customers are large companies with product teams of 250 or so PMs that are using Product Board to kind of manage a portfolio of products across multiple teams. I think if you look at the history of the company, it very much started with small teams with a few product people or a few co-founders. And over the years, we've grown to support larger and larger organizations, adding concepts like teams and products and permissions and things that you might expect us to need to have to support those larger groups of people.
Okay. All right. So let's wrap with just how that kind of maps to, if I can just go back to this stuff here. So Sophie, you were saying this is what you get out of the box when you start the trial, which is this kind of like immediate need. Is that the way to think about it? Roadmaps is yeah.
Exactly. I'm actually going to ban a white for you, and I'll share my screen if that's okay.
Okay. I shall stop if I can find my.
So Sophie is the best person at Product Board to speak to this. So I'm very happy she's on the call.
I didn't know how to handle two people at the same time. I'm used to sort of just one-on-ones, but there you go. we muddle along.
I love it. I love it. So I'm going to go a little bit backwards. I'm going to leave this page and just to make things a little bit simpler. So the way that I think about it is, let's say you come to us and you just say, hey, I've actually done all of the homework. I know what I want to build, and I'm just trying to get organized, and I want a place to align with teams. Like, I want to be able to show my roadmap. We find that there's a lot of people that what they're trying to do is share all of their knowledge across the team. We know that they want to grow in maturity and include their customer feedback process, but this is a really good entry point for us because people can see the value fast. So what you are always defaulted into is the ability to have a backlog and to start roadmaps. So you can see we have quite a few different roadmaps that you can do. And our idea is that we want this to just be as easy as for you as possible to get up and running on, hey, here I'm organized and I'm going to share all these plans. Now, like I mentioned, the very next one is about incorporating feedback. So this is about, okay, I feel, and what's interesting is actually people enter into these plans, like they can enter into Essentials or Pro or Scale. We've seen it across the board, but there's also room for graduation. So say you get done with your roadmap and your features board and you're feeling good, then you can start to make sure that all of your feedback channels and feedback sources are incorporated into Product Board. You start tying those to your features board, which is all of your feature ideas in your backlog. And then you start to see the customer-driven roadmap from there. And then when you do your very last jump on to Scale, it's all about teams and it's about strategic objectives. So it's about how can I, for lack of a better word, scale my process across all my teams, make sure that we're thinking through the right things, that all of the cogs are working in the right direction. And a lot of that is providing some sort of kind of higher level visualization as to what's happening in your department. And the way that we show that right now is through objectives. So you can kind of have a higher level and then always go a little bit deeper in. And then there's some special capabilities in this plan as well. If you want to get into segmentation, that's a whole new can of worms that's great to explain. But the other thing is, as you scale, I think a part of the question that you're trying to ask us is, what size teams does Product Board work for? And we've actually thought quite a bit in order to allow larger teams to work in Product Board. We have specific places where you have a different product release for one team versus others. And so they work in different cadences. And we've built that all into this scale experience.
Yeah, so I'd say there's a dimension of the kind of movement between editions that is company size, because as you grow, you have kind of new demands, but there's also a process maturity and how you think about building product, starting where we kind of meet people where they are most, where most people have a tool like Jira where they're tracking work and they're trying to kind of visualize the work that they're doing, but incorporating customer insights into the prioritization process or moving to be kind of very objective driven in how you build product sometimes takes hands-on help and support. And so our customer success team also, we have people on the team who used to be heads of product at organizations that partner with customers to actually help move them along that journey, and not just kind of throw them into a tool and say, hey, here's this bucket of tools that you can kind of use at your peril.
At your peril. This is sort of like a selfish question. So, we collect CSAT and NPS in a very mobile, specific, single click type stuff. So get in, get out very fast. Would we webhook to you, from our back end, so that our customers could collect that sort of data in there? Or are you working on, or do you have like a broader? You showed a bunch of integrations before, and you've kind of half answered this. But in our selfish sort of situation, if we wanted to link our customers into your system for that sort of stuff, how would we glue that together?
Yeah, we have a note creation endpoint that could kind of hit any of those individual score assessments that customers are going in and rating. I'd say one of the areas of kind of exploration and that we're excited about working on next year is the notion of more structured insights. So not just written insights, feedback that you've been getting, but things like NPS scores, insights from analytics activities. And so I am happy to connect you to Martin, who leads our insights effort. And I'm sure he'd love to kind of dig into what we can support today and also kind of think a little bit further into the future about how to make that experience better.
Yeah. No, that's interesting to do with the, maybe NPS is owned by a different group as opposed to PM. So usually PMs want that kind of information. I don't know whether CS owns that. How does that kind of fall out in more mature groups? Is it CS that really owns that?
Yeah, so we have CS that owns it, but we are very tightly connected. So there are times where so there's times where like I will create a custom field in ProductBoard, and specifically you could put your NPS score for each of the features there. Now we would need a little bit more to make sure that it was always syncing, right? But I'm curious, like just out of my own selfish pursuit, do you use NPS to make sure that certain features are up to scratch and so you need to improve, or do you do NPS to see if there's anything you should keep versus kill? I'm kind of curious.
Not for us, but customers who are using this particular thing will quite often actually ask about a process that's been completed, so some particular function within the application. So that seems to be it. Then there's the kind of the global stuff, which I'm not good on the philosophy of NPS, but asking somebody once a month are they happy or not seems like it's really for management reporting purposes rather than anything useful to do. Maybe I'm too cynical.
I was going to answer your. I've been in. So Amplitude is very anti NPS. Kind of philosophically, I've been at companies that are very pro and kind of feel that it helps people keep tabs on the health of kind of their customers' engagement. And so, I can, having lived both experiences, see both sides. I think certainly for teams that are finding value in it, we want to be that centralized location where any of the inputs the team's actually relying on to make decisions can kind of get brought into a single place. So we aren't too opinionated about the types of inputs that we want to be able to collect in ProductBoard.
I'm laughing because I actually am from the place that invented NPS. So I can't say much because they made
it's a hot button topic.
Yeah, but I do find that if you just ask people if they're happy, it usually is not that helpful. But if you actually do the NPS the way that Bain does it against each feature, then you get somewhere. And it's kind of actually a little bit closer to what you would see in the Canon model, where they're like trying to figure out how much people could live with a feature versus not. So I'm always trying to figure out like how can you use NPS in a product specific way that's helpful as I merge the management consulting and product management worlds.
Yeah, that's definitely where we come at it from, because it can be very instantaneous, can be very single click. You can insert that right at that particular feature point. But then if you're running too many concurrent experiments around that feedback collection, then your product will come off spammy, and then from an overall perspective, you'll get less satisfaction. So anyway, it's about being well orchestrated about collecting feedback too, I think, in that situation. Yeah,
definitely.
Well, thanks both. I mean, I could talk for another hour, or I could listen for another hour. Don't listen to me for an hour, but be great to meet up again at some stage as well. So maybe we can do that in the new year. It's been great to talk to you both.
And yeah, I was going to say, if we can travel more freely in the new year, we'd love to come on by and join one of these sessions in person.
Yeah, that would be terrific. Yeah, Sydney in January, February can be a little bit hot, but you know. I think everybody wants to get out of the US at the moment. So
that's right. We'll see. We'll see over the next couple of days how strongly that.
Indeed. So anyway, thanks both. And so if people want to get started, I see it's a 14-day free trial. So that's and basically, is there anything the person's mindset should be in before, you know, what's the best way to get value out of the 14-day trial? Can they do something like a import from Trello, or is there any way to sort of kickstart it so they have a really satisfying 14-day experience?
Yeah, so you know what I would say is we have an amazing help center. So if you really want an amazing 14-day experience, you can always try it out. I think as PMs, we're tinkerers. We like figuring out stuff for ourselves. But we have an entire collection of videos that are amazing and walks you through how ProductBoard thinks about ProductBoard and how to use it. That I'd highly recommend. And the other thing is we do have import capabilities. So if you're coming in with a backlog or ideas, you can just put that in and then start playing around with it there.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So connecting to Jira, importing, connecting some sources of feedback that already exist that we have kind of native connections to. And then I think honestly, including others in the organization too. It's one of those tools that helps drive alignment. So bringing cross-functional partners in, bringing the sales team in. When we evaluated ProductBoard at Amplitude, we had kind of customer success partners throughout the entire process that were participating as well, and thinking through how to best capture feedback from their team. So thinking about it as how would our organization get value from this product, not just let me go click around and kick some tires and formulate my own opinion about it, I think really gives you a perspective of how effective it will be.
Yeah. Yes. In fact, it's a good onboarding lesson for anybody that's in a similar sort of space. To you throw your invite a colleague right up front in that onboarding phase, and I think that's a really valuable thing. So, of which I did. I invited other people. Okay. So Sophie and Alon, thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And now we can do the obligatory Zoom wave.
Have a great day.
It's supposed to be very awkward to do this.
Have a great day.
Ciao, you too. Take care.
Bye.